Janet here from the 4-H office. Today's fun project is to paint a stained glass window, making your own creation, kind of like this dragonfly today. What you're going to need, and you're going to need a lot of supplies and a very big work area with some newspaper down if you're a little bit messy. But what you're going to need today is a frame with a piece of glass. It can be a frame from the dollar store or any other store. It doesn't need to be too fancy, but definitely a piece of glass with a frame. You're also going to need paint brushes, Elmer's white glue, the bottom of an egg carton, because we are mixing the glue with the paints today to create some stained glass paints. You're going to need craft sticks, paper towels, Elmer's clear glue as well for your different colors. And then your basic colors of acrylic paint, black definitely, because we're going to make the lead lines in stained glass using black paint and white glue. And then different colors of acrylic glue that we're going to mix with the clear glue to create see-through paints. Now, you can use your own picture that you've designed. You can go online. They do have templates for stained glass coloring sheets that you can use, or you can get your own pictures. So I went online, I found a few stained glass templates to use. I've also printed off my own pictures, which you can trace pictures, but what you're going to do is actually extend the lines from different points to create the pieces of clear glass for your background. And we can work on that a little bit later. So this project does take quite a few hours. We do have to get started with the lines and let them dry before we can put on the colors. So to get started, you need to take your glass out of your frame. You might need a parent or an older teen's help with this part of it, especially if you don't have the little swinging tabs. If you've got something that needs to be pulled up with a fingernail or a screwdriver, you might want a little bit of help. So we're just going to simply take our glass out of the frame very carefully. Be careful, edges can be sharp on these. Nobody needs to get cut today. We're just going to gently, with a paper towel, a soft paper towel, or a cloth, clean our glass. We want to make sure we have all the dust and fingerprints and any oils off the glass. We need a clean work surface. So what we're going to do is, if you chose a coloring sheet diagram picture, what you're just going to do is put that underneath your glass and trace it. Same with the pictures that you've taken of your animals, flowers, family. Just trace everything. I'm just trying to figure out what the best fit for this piece of glass is. It's a little bit bigger than my pictures that I have printed out, so you do want to check that as well. Well, looks like I've got a winner here. My cow picture fits the best. So I'm just centering everything. Hope you guys can see. I've centered the glass over her picture, and what I am simply going to do is make sure I like it, and then I'm going to mix up my line paint, my lead. Basically it's going to be like lead lines in real stained glass. So we're just going to take our white glue. We want a 70-30 mixture, so however much you mix up is going to depend on the size and number of pictures that you're painting. Window panes, I guess, that you're making. We'll go that way. So 70% glue, 30% black paint. Make sure your paint's all shook up, mixed up. It's also good to have the garbage can right next to you when you're doing this in case you need to throw out used popsicle sticks. But just take your big popsicle stick and we're just going to mix the glue and the paint. You want to make sure that the paint, you can go gray if you want, but I'm going to keep my lines fairly dark and just mix. So when you're happy with the consistency, just kind of wipe your craft stick off on the side of your egg carton. And the reason I'm using an egg carton today is it's more like an artist palette. I can mix up my different colors in this, and if I need to, like when different colors are drying, I can just put a piece of plastic over it, cover my paints so they don't dry out and they don't get that film across the top. And I'm also mixing up a bunch of different colors today, so I want to definitely make sure that I have enough space to keep everything. So to get started, you're just going to find a really nice thin brush that you can use to create lines for your project. And you're just going to simply dip your paintbrush into the glue black paint mixture, and you're just going to trace onto the glass from the picture below. Remember just to go slow. Put enough glue paint on here if you want to have very puffy lines, three-dimensional lines. You can use a lot more. Just go slow so that you keep your lines pretty well defined. Now when you create a piece of stained glass, you're putting together pieces of glass, different little pieces that you've cut into shapes following a pattern or your own creation. And when you put them together, you use solder to solder them, but there are always lines in between the pieces. So when we draw on these black lines, we're just mimicking the lines of the pieces. So we're just going to go through connecting all of our lines and creating our picture. So I'm going to get to work on this. When I'm done, I'll show you what I've got, and then we're going to let it set for 2 to 4 hours to dry, depending on the thickness of your lines. Once it's dry, then you can start painting in the different colors. Alright, so I finished tracing my lines. When I first painted them on, some of them were a little flat, so I went back through them very gently on top, just added some more paint. So what I have here is my picture of my cow. As you can see, I've taken all of the lines and connected them somewhere, so she looks like a stained glass picture. Now the bottom of her feet are actually at the bottom of the glass. I could go over that with a black line to fill in the bottom of the hooves, but I figure that the frame will cover that. If it doesn't, I still can go over it with black. So what we have here, picture of the original. All of my lines are connected, and I do see as I'm holding this up and showing you that some of my lines I didn't quite catch aren't quite thick enough, especially like right here. It looks like there isn't a line there, so I do need to go over that a little bit more, and as well as her nose here. So what we've got is basically a stained glass picture with all of our pieces already together, assembled. We just have to put a little bit of color onto them. So just to finish going over my lines, making them a little bit thicker, making them a little bit more three-dimensional. Once I completed that, I need to figure out how to divide my background so that my background is in stained glass pieces as well. And you can choose to either do straight, sharp lines, or you can do some curvy lines for your background, depending on what you want your picture to look like. But they all have to extend from an existing line and go out to the edge of the glass. Now I've actually done real stained glass. It's not as easy as this painting. You have to be pretty precise to have your pieces match up so that when you're soldering and filling in the seams, that everything is a nice straight line and you don't have gobs of solder everywhere. Kind of like what I'm doing with my paint, making sure that I have all my lines nice and full and blended. If you have some lines that aren't quite the same thickness, you can always just pull the glue paint, just pull it a little bit to thin it out, add a little bit more to thicken it, trying to keep your lines consistent across the whole picture. Just do a little bit more filling in here, and then we'll get to work on my background. Remember, once we're done with the black, 2 to 4 hours, depending on how thick it is. Check it. It may take longer. It may be done earlier, but you want to make sure that all of your black solder lines, lead lines, are totally dry before you start painting, because you don't accidentally want to put your hand in it and ruin your lines. If you start painting and you find that you can't quite get to where you need to be, turn the whole paper. Don't turn your glass. Just turn the whole paper, being careful not to slide the glass. That'll give you another angle from which to work. All right, hold this up a little bit. See where I still have to add some paint. And remember, make sure all of your picture is connected. If you take a look at some of the stained glass coloring sheets, you'll see where everything is connected. There are no empty spaces where lines just stop. You don't want that. You want to make sure in your picture that all the lines are connected. Alright, that is much better. So, to make our background, to have our pieces, you're just going to kind of decide where you want your lines to come off of. Looking at this picture, I'd probably have a line or two coming off the tips of my cow's ears, just to have 2 or 3 pieces up at the top. I'm probably going to leave my background pieces bigger so that the intricacy, the detail is all in the center at my cow itself. So if you need to, grab yourself a ruler if you want to draw straight lines with that. I'm just going to freehand it, remembering to try to keep the same thickness of my cow picture on my background lines. Remembering to go slow, adding enough paint so that you can't see through it. I'll probably take a piece and come off her hip here. If you do decide to draw your lines on with a ruler, just use a black Sharpie that you can cover over with your glue paint. Off the bottom of her belly, I'll take another line. Off the other corner of her belly. And then this is a pretty big piece on this side, so I might actually take a line from the middle of her belly. Making sure that all your background lines connect to your design. So, what I have here is my stained glass window. I have all of my lead lines, quote unquote, lead lines drawn on. I'm gonna let this dry for 2 to 3 hours, 2 to 4 hours rather. Come back and we'll put the colors on. It's been about 6 hours since I last worked on my project. So I am actually going to start the color process of painting inside my lead lines on my stained glass painting. I'm going to take my clear glue, put a little bit into a couple of the egg carton chambers, and then slowly add a little bit of paint. Now I'm actually going to start at the center and work my way out so I don't get my hand in anything while I'm painting. So to get going, I'm going to start with some gray for the cow's nose. And what you want to do when you mix up your clear glue and your paint is just add a little bit of paint at a time to check the color and the consistency. You want the paint glue mixture to dry clear so you can see through it, but you don't want it so light that you can't tell what color it is. So I added just about a drop of paint, and I'm going to start on the nose and just kind of fill in the nose and the muzzle on my cow. Once you are done with the color cells pieces of your stained glass painting, you're going to let it dry. I'm probably going to let this sit overnight and dry. And in the morning when I come in, I'm going to put it in its frame. I would recommend not trying anything too intricate, too complicated for your first project, especially if you don't have really fine paint brushes to paint with. Again, just like when we did our black lead lines, I'm just covering it over. I'm getting it to be a bit puffy. Just being careful to make sure that all of the air bubbles get worked out of the paint if there happen to be any when you're painting. And to make sure I stay within the lines and not paint on top of my black. If you do happen to do that, wait for your colors to dry and then just cover over with the black again if you've covered your egg carton and they haven't dried out. If you're doing this and you're not sure if you've reached all the edges and have gone right up to your black lines, just paint it to a point, hold it up, and see if you see any light through it. You can also see if you've got your paint evenly on your piece or if it's kind of blobbed. Looking at my cow nose here, I see a little bit that's been blobbed, so we're just going to fix that. I am painting on the back of my picture so that the background is white so I can see better of where my color's going. So I'm just going to keep on working on this, and when I get it done, I'll be back to show you the finished product. Okay, I have painted my cow and my background. What I did is I made my cow a little bit darker, put a little bit more brown paint into the glue mixture and made my background a little bit lighter so that when the when the light comes through, you can see it. You can also see as it's drying some spaces. I wouldn't repaint this until you are completely certain what it looks like when it's dry. I did put paint on a little bit thicker in some spots. I did find that when using the clear glue for this project, it tended to get a little bit tackier quicker than the white glue. It made painting a little bit more difficult. So to finish this project, the only other step you could do is when the paint and glue are totally dry is to put a coat of Mod Podge over it to protect your design. That takes a lot longer to dry. Please read the bottle for the instructions. but that would set and give your stained glass painting a hard finish and would protect the glue paint from peeling and flaking. So once your project's totally dry, put it back into the frame that you took it out of. Don't put the paper back, cardboard back on it, but leave it open and stand it in a window so the sunshine can come through your stained glass window. For more projects from Shenango County 4-H, visit us on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, both under Shenango County 4-H. Have a great day.